I was discovering as I was reviewing chapter 8 is it's a really good example of some of the other things that I've noticed as we've been studying Ecclesiastes. There's a general truth, and in this case, he was talking about taking an oath before the king. But there's a specific truth for Solomon that he had experienced in his life, right? So it was a general truth that we should take. It was a specific truth that he realized, but it's also a truth for how men should approach God. So it has a higher level truth as well. So it's got layers all over the place. So we could spend, I don't know how many weeks we could spend in each one of these chapters really unpacking it and taking it down to every single level. But since I want to get through this by Christmas, we're not going to do that. But do you see how just in chapter 8, all of those levels are true? It's a general truth. It was a specific truth for Solomon, and it's a specific truth for us before God. All of those things were revealed in that chapter. And we're going to find the same thing today. And I think you're going to find it as we continue to finish this book. So any other questions now before we go into chapter 9? All right, well then put your seatbelts on because here we go. We're going to go to chapter 9 and we're going to start in verses 1 through 3. For I have taken all this to my heart and explain it that righteous men, wise men, and their deeds are in the hand of God. Man does not know whether it will be loved or hated. Anything awaits him. It is the same for all. There is one fate for the righteous and for the wicked, for the good, for the clean and for the unclean, for the man who offers a sacrifice and one who does not sacrifice. As the good man is, so is the sinner. As the swearer is, so is the one who is afraid to swear. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that there is one fate for all men. Furthermore, the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil, and insanity is in their hearts throughout their lives. Afterwards, they go to the dead. Somber thinking yet again, isn't it? So let's go back to verse 1. How does Solomon begin? I've taken this, all of this to heart. What is this referring to? What did he just finish the review or the last thing he was talking about when we finished chapter 8? Well, what he was specifically referring to that he was spinning out about was that the righteous receive evil and the wicked receive good here on earth. Would you agree that was the last thing he was talking about in chapter 8? So that's this that he's contemplating in his heart. What does Solomon do with this? And explain it that righteous and wise men and their deeds are in the hand of God. Do you see how those are linked? Right? That's what he's just been talking about. And now he turns it over and he said, all these things that we ponder about back and forth, I understand in my heart, they are in God's hand. That's what ultimately, right? Isn't that what sovereignty is when we say that he's sovereign? It's all in his hand. So there are two types of men that are defined. How is the first defined? Righteous men, and the other men, wise men. Solomon does not equate the two men as the same. They are different men. But what is the same about these men? Their deeds are in the hand of God. Keep that. That's again our whole theme of Ecclesiastes. It's all in God's hand. Solomon's wisdom ponders it. He leaves it there. He understands that that's where it is. What are deeds? The work that men can do in this life. That's a deed. The work of men are in the hand of God. What is being acknowledged by something being in the hand of God? It's in his control. I define that because sometimes when we've been in Bible studies or we've been in the church for a while, we can fill in what hand of God means. But for somebody who might be new to the scriptures, they might not understand what that means. So depending on where you are in your walk, sometimes you need to go back and you need to define it. If you're helping somebody else in a Bible study, these would be the opportunities to take, to not make assumptions that everybody's come to the same conclusion. Okay, so with a beginning student in the Word, you would take time there. All right, so what is the it? And when it said God is in control of it, what was God in control of? Well, specifically here, follow back. What was the it a reference to previously? Their deeds. He's in charge of their deeds. What is true about these deeds? Man does not know whether it will be love or hatred. Anything awaits him. God's response to man's deeds can be love or hatred. Does that mean that we're wrapped up in that? Our deeds can control God? That can't mean that, because he's just spent how many chapters saying that's not what it is, okay? Because God does not allow man to know how his deeds will be used by God, what is the conclusion? Anything awaits him. Man is truly at the mercy of God in every outcome. See how you can spin out on that verse and take it all kinds of directions. Well, let's follow what he's been talking about. God is the only one that determines. Man wants to figure out whether the deeds are righteous or the wicked, and he's like, God's in control. Stop it. Now he's going to give us the ultimate reason that you should stop sitting around worrying about it. Verse 2, what is true about man's physical fate? The same for all. And then he gives us this example like he did back in chapter 3. There's one fate for the righteous and for the wicked, for the good, for the clean and the unclean, for the man who offers sacrifices and the one who doesn't, and the man who is good and the man who's the sinner, and the man who's the swearer and the one who is afraid of swearing. He's just giving you lots of examples of how man tries to separate man. Oh, that guy cusses, he's bad. Oh, that person never cusses, they must be good, right? You see, man's separation of man, and he's trying to bring them all together for all man to understand that doesn't matter. Before God, that doesn't matter. Guess what? There's one fate. All men are destined to die physically. Again, his focus has been events that happen under the sun. What happens here on earth? What happens to us physically? That's his point. There's no good outcome. The guy that stands around and does all the righteous things, even if he's doing the right things before God, guess what? He gets to die too. That's Solomon's point. So we don't need to get too uppity about whatever it is we're trying to define in God. We can truly say God's in control because I know everybody's going to physically die. Verse 3. I promise you it gets better, ladies. Verse 3. What does Solomon say about this fact? This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that there is one fate for all men. This comes from evil, or is the result of evil. That all men are going to die is from an evil. What else does Solomon say? Is the same for all men. He continues in that verse. He says, furthermore, what? The hearts of the sons of men are full of evil, and insanity is in their hearts throughout their lives. Afterwards, they go to the dead. He's pretty simple on this one, right? I want to unpack this because there's some important things he's getting ready to make a shift on. If you look to Psalms chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Now, I did multiple verses and then I erased and then I went back. So there's other verses you can go and do a look for, but I'm going to focus on Psalms. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have committed abominable deeds. There is no one who does good. The Lord has looked down from heaven upon the sons of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek after God. They have all turned aside. Together they have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. And who quotes this later when he writes in the New Testament? Paul, chapter 3, Romans. All men fall short. No man seeks God on his own. Wow, this was something that Solomon understood. This isn't a new concept for Solomon, all right, but one that he completely agrees with, in that the sons of men are evil. This evil is why all men must die physically. And if we had unlimited number of Tuesdays until Christmas, we would spend a little bit of time in Genesis here, and we talk about the fall and what sin brought and why we all die physically. But I'm not going to do that. I'd be happy to direct you to other studies that will do that, but that's the truth that Solomon understands here. That's what he's underscoring. That's the evil. Evil exists. Now we know all men die physically. That's his conclusion. It's not to be depressing in any way. It's just a matter of fact. That's the evil.
All over an apple.
What's that?
All over an apple.
All over, well, maybe an apple. Man's heart is evil. Man's heart is evil. We're born with that evil nature, and you can go back to the story of Genesis if you want to really, unfold how that occurred. Is man surprised? Was God surprised? God had a plan. Even back there in the garden, God had a plan. All right, so let's go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, and we're going to do verses 4 through 6. For whoever is joined with all the living, there is hope. Surely a live dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer a reward, for their memory is forgotten. Indeed, their love, their hate, and their zeal have already perished, and they will no longer have a share in all that is done under the sun. Needless to say, this group of verses becomes very confusing as you try to make your way through the commentaries. So let's unpack it, starting in verse 4. What does Solomon say is one true outcome? Whoever is joined with all the living, there is hope. All right? Who are all the living? That's the question. Are we still talking physically? All right. Well, let's answer that by saying, for the living, in this description, in this verse, there's what? Ooh, there's a hope. The living, then, are those who are alive spiritually. Those are the only people who can have hope. But what does hope for the living mean? And that's why we know this is a verse where things change. It's understanding that word hope. What does hope mean? It's going to be something good. Yes, ma'am. Again, did word search, all kinds of words hope that were in the scriptures. And you know where a lot of them were, and I will let you all do your own study in that, was the book of Job. Tons and tons and tons of times the word hope is used over and over and over. Of all the books, who would imagine the book of Job would have so much hope? But it does, because it also is a book of wisdom, right? But I went to Psalms because that, I think, is a little more in tune with Solomon in his time, because we know they would have been there. They would have been things he would have had access to. There's 3 different verses I'll go to, all that use this specific word. Psalms 39:7, and now, Lord, what do I wait? For what do I wait? My hope is in you. Psalm 62:5, my soul, wait in silence for God only, for my hope is from him. Psalms 146:5, how blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God. That was an understanding from Old Testament, but we have the blessing of revelation from the New Testament that we can also look at this description and word of hope. So in Galatians chapter 5, we'll do verses 4 through 6. You have been severed from Christ, you who are seeking to be justified by law. You have fallen from grace. For we, through the Spirit by faith, are waiting for the hope of righteousness. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision means anything, but faith works through love. The hope of righteousness, that's exactly what we're talking about. Also in Titus chapter 2, verses 11 through 14, for the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all men, instructing us to deny ungodliness and worldly desires and to live sensibly, righteously, and godly in the present age, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Christ Jesus, who gave himself to us to redeem us from every lawless deed and to purify for himself a people for his own possession, zealous for good deeds. You think Solomon's onto something? The hope Solomon refers to is the same hope mentioned throughout the book of Job and many other Psalms. This hope was in God, was from God, according to the Old Testament, and then the New Testament clarifies this is the hope of righteousness. For us now it is the appearance of Christ Jesus, our righteousness. Little word, big meaning. It's not just a general, I kind of hope it doesn't rain today, right? It's not that kind of a hope. This is a very specific hope. It is about salvation. That is the hope that's being talked about. Notice at the beginning of the verse back in Ecclesiastes, what did it say? It says, for whoever is joined with all the living. Now that's important that you would join a group. This would indicate the living is the group to join. If there's ever been a group to join, this would be the group you want to be in, right? One would need to leave another group to join this living group. Before we have the hope in God's provision of righteousness or in Christ Jesus, we were in the group of who? The dead. You're all in that group. We're all in that group together. And to join this other group only happens through this hope. That's why we know that's such an important perspective of that particular verse and that particular word. How does verse 4 end? Surely a living dog is better than a dead lion. You don't see that on a lot of bumper stickers. Just saying. Let's unpack. What is meant by a live dog? All right, in most cultures, not in cultures like we live in, where the poodle sleeps on the bed, in most cultures, what is the reference to a dog, a picture of? They're the scavengers in the streets, okay? They are, and in the Jewish way, they talked about the Gentiles being dogs. It was a very low, unappreciated, it was a nasty creature. All right, so I overemphasize that for us in here because we don't have that picture of dogs normally. We love on our dogs. So you have to separate your cultural perspective on dog to understand what they reference to this lowly, nasty animal was. A person who is considered as a dog would be seen as lowly and filthy. So this lowly creature is described by Solomon to be what? Alive. This alive should be tied back to the hope mentioned earlier. This hope is the eternal outcome of life, having righteousness, a hope only found in God. I'm repeating that because it's so important you understand that hope had that meaning. The lion is a creature admired because what? It's physically strong, right? King of the jungle. A lion is to be feared. I mean, the lion's pretty much at the top of the food chain, wouldn't you say? Right? No matter what this creature is when it is physically alive, once it is dead, nothing of what it was before matters. Right? If a dead lion's there to you, I'm like, ooh, what a majestic, no. If dead is a reference to a spiritual reality, then a magnificent creature like a lion has no value spiritually. It is just a dead lion. A lowly creature from his physical nature, but who is alive spiritually, is better than a physically magnificent creature who is dead spiritually. That's the dog and lion. And you only get there if you understand the transition Solomon made when he used the term hope and living earlier in that verse. He's moved to talking about spiritual reality, spiritually living and spiritually dead. Verse 5, what is true for the living? They know they're going to die. The term living is still being used for those who are spiritually alive. Those who know they are alive spiritually know they will experience physical death, right? It's a reality that spiritually alive people can understand. What is true for those who are spiritually dead? The dead don't know anything. They have no awareness of their spiritual condition. Ladies, the spiritually dead don't realize they're spiritually dead. They're not aware of it. Let that sink in. When you try to logic your way into a conversation of the gospel with somebody, God has to be present. God has to be the actor because man can't do it on his own. It is impossible. They have no awareness of their spiritual condition. What else is now gone when they physically die? Nor do they have any reward. Right? What reward would the spiritually dead have had? Their earthly reward, whatever they had here. Whatever they had here, that was it. That's what they got. That was their whatever reward you want to give it. The rewards they received on earth are gone. In a moment, it all just disappears. Those rewards do not follow them into the afterlife. Does that make sense? I mean, that's not a stretch for us, but I just want to, he's agreeing with that. Solomon's giving us a reason to understand that to be true. What else is true about the spiritually dead? Their memory is forgotten. They will not be remembered by the spiritually living. Gone. It could also mean that they won't have a memory of what happened here, where they are going. It could be either or both. It could be true in both ways. You know, when you're separated and you go to a terrible place like hell is described, whatever that you got to experience in the short period of time that was life here is going to fade. They're not going to hold on to that memory while they're in their circumstances where they go. Verse 6, what else is true for the spiritually dead? Indeed, their love and their hate and their zeal have already perished. Everything they felt or thought they accomplished on earth has ceased or perished with them. Those things will not have an impact on their eternal destination. Spiritually dead people, no matter what they do here on earth, are making no impact on their eternal destination. There is nothing lasting of them, even on the earth. And they no longer have a share in all that is done under the sun. Let it sink in. These are Solomon's words, and he's now moved from his observing life under the sun, right? The physical things that go on in life and how the wicked get this and the other, and, the righteous don't get the good things, whatever. And he's kind of shifted now with this word hope. And he starts with, those that are spiritually dead, this is just the reality. But now we're going to pick up a little joy. So in chapter 9, verses 7 through 10, go then, eat your bread in happiness and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let your clothes be white all the time, and let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the woman who you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given you. He's given to you under the sun. For this is your reward in life, and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all of your might. For there is no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, where you are going. Doesn't that all seem simple? Okay, let's go back. Solomon was speaking to the spiritually living about the fact that they were going to die physically. Remember? That was the conversation that he was having. And what the state of those who are spiritually dead truly is. So that's where he had been in the previous verses. Then in verse 7, Solomon again speaks to the spiritually living. And he starts with, eat your bread in happiness and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, that God has already approved your works. So those who are spiritually alive should do what while they are spiritually alive? Enjoy what God has provided. Notice the difference. The drinking of the wine is with the heart that is cheerful, not that a heart that is made cheerful or merry, as was described in chapter 8. That's why I spent the time to review chapter 8 before we got started in that particular verse. Notice how it can be confusing for someone who doesn't look for the details. Multiple times when he talks about the eat and the drink, it's been an encouragement to just daily enjoy what God has given you and to be content. In chapter 8, it was not that. Now he's back to that. Why can the spiritually alive do this? God has already approved your works. There is no pressure in the work done for God attached to pleasing God for the accomplishment of ultimate righteousness or salvation. Your works don't get you there. We can look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, and we could do another whole teaching right here. So we're not going to do another whole teaching here. We're just going to look at a confirmation. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. Spiritually dead people don't have faith. It doesn't matter what works they do. None of them are considered good before God because the person is spiritually dead. We have a world wrapped up in being able to go, oh, but did you see so-and-so fed this and did that and gave their money here and right? All the things the world wants to measure. From God's perspective, doesn't count. Filthy rags. Doesn't matter how good it is to another man's standard. From God's standard, if you do not have faith, if you are not spiritually alive, your works mean nothing to him. And that's all that matters. Verse 8, what else can the spiritually living do? Let your clothes be white all the time. No concept of after Labor Day, don't be wearing the white, right? None of that going on. And let not oil be lacking on your head. Is Solomon suggesting that the spiritually alive should walk around every day wearing white? No, we know that is not what he is talking about. So, what does it mean to let your clothes be white all the time? We could go with the robe of righteousness. We could go to Revelation and talk about this putting on the white, all right? But Solomon didn't have that. Solomon didn't have a picture of Revelation in his mind when he's talking about that. So in Solomon's day, what did it mean for men to wear white? And you know when I say men, I mean mankind. What did it mean when men or mankind wore white? It's a special occasion. That's their party clothes. You didn't wear white every day. And it was for a special occasion that you would save your white clothing. When you are spiritually alive, every day is a party occasion. Right? Versus the mourning. And if you were in mourning, you would wear what? Black. That hasn't changed. If you are spiritually alive, you live it. You know you live it. You're in celebration every day of this life that you've been given. This is the picture of it that Solomon's giving. Here's another one that we don't get. What does oil on one's head mean? In my case, it means I need to take a shampoo every morning. That's not obviously what he's talking about. 2 verses in the Old Testament, just so you know that I'm kind of been doing the research. Amos 6:6 says, who drink wine from sacrificial bowls while they anoint themselves with the finest of oils, yet they have not grieved over the ruin of Joseph. So in here he's talking about evil men doing this, enjoying themselves, anointing themselves with fabulous, expensive oils. 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 2 says, so Joab sent to Toka and brought a wise woman from there and said to her, please pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning garments now and do not anoint yourself with oil. But be like a woman who has been in mourning for many days. So someone would anoint with fine oils as an indulgence, and another reference to those who anoint themselves regularly with oil. It's just what you did as part of your daily routine. We might say, we put a little deodorant on every day. It's part of our regular routine, right? We just do that. To not anoint with oil would be done in times of mourning. That's the picture that Solomon is painting for the spiritually alive. Put on your good duds. Smell good, right? White clothes, anoint yourself with oil. You are spiritually living. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 8, Solomon said, let not oil be lacking on your head. So the conclusion is one that is not in mourning. Verse 9, what does Solomon say the spiritually alive should do? Enjoy life with the woman who you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he's given you. Certainly, Solomon understands that God's design for marriage is to be between one man and one woman. Notice he says, the woman. This woman is the same woman all the days of one's short life. This woman would be given by who? By God. Enjoying this woman is the reward of one's life. This woman will be there in the toil in which one has to labor here on earth. Ladies, substitute men for you. That's the picture. It's a joy. Spiritually alive should enjoy what God has given. And this particular gift of a woman or a man is a gift that Solomon calls out. Think Think about it, ladies. Solomon might have had the best advantage in life as someone who missed this reward by having 1,000 women in his life. Much wisdom can be shared from those who learned the lesson by doing things the wrong way. Just because Solomon lived the wrong way doesn't mean he doesn't have the wisdom to see it and to pass that wisdom on to others. And that's the wisdom from Solomon. The spiritually alive know how to do this. It's a gift from God. In verse 10, what else does Solomon say to the spiritually alive? Whatever you're doing, do it with all your might. So what work you have been given to do, do it with everything that you have. All your time, your money, your talent, your dedication, right? There is no certain work for all of us to do. There's no checklist, ladies. There's not going to be one today. There wasn't one yesterday, and there won't be one tomorrow, right? Whatever that work is, we are to give ourselves completely to do it while we are alive physically on the earth. That's the encouragement. You keep doing what he's asked you to do. You keep operating in the gift that he's given you. That's what you do. Guess what? There's no spiritual retirement. Just in case there's some of you that were thinking retirement, you just get to check out. Whatever work God's given you to do, in that sense, is a forever work until you're no longer here. And that is a joy when you're doing the work of the Lord. What reason does Solomon say we should do this while we are physically alive? Because there's no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol where you are going. Who's he been talking to? Do the spiritually alive go to Sheol? Yes, they do. Now we are going to take a rabbit trail. We are going to talk about this one because that's what throws people off. They don't understand this. And so he couldn't have been talking to the spiritually alive then, but he is. He is talking to the spiritually alive. Okay. The time for measured works ends when we die. So that's the first truth of what he just taught us. A time for gaining knowledge or wisdom to change the outcome of what a person can do or be, that comes to an end. In Solomon's time, all who died went to Sheol, both the spiritually alive and the spiritually dead. There were two different holding places in Sheol. And where do we go to get that clarification? There's a story that Jesus tells us in Luke chapter 16. Here's what makes this different than the parables that Jesus taught. In parables, he would say things like, there's a certain man, or there's 10 virgins. He gives a name, specific name. It's a specific event. It's not a parable in Luke chapter 16. We're going to read verses 19 through 26. Now there was a rich man, and he habitually dressed in purple and fine linen, joyously living in splendor every day. And a poor man named Lazarus, who was laid at his gate, covered with sores, and longing to be fed with the crumbs which were falling from the rich man's table. Besides, even the dogs were coming and licking his sores. Now the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died, and he was buried. In Hades, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried out and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus so that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool off my tongue. For I am in agony in this flame. But Abraham said, Child, remember that during your life you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus bad things. But now he is being comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you, there is a great chasm, fixed, so that those who wish to come over from here to you will not be able, and that none may cross over from there to us. So in Ecclesiastes, when he says you go to Sheol, it is a place that all the dead went, spiritually living and spiritually dead. When they got there, there were different compartments that they got to go to. You see that being revealed in Luke? Is that missing sometimes in people's teaching? We don't understand that. That's the problem when a lot of men try to go back in their commentaries and they try to delve into what these verses talk about because they've made a wrong assumption. Well, this must be talking about the evil ones again. And then they try to go and repack everything else that was previous to it. Oh, and they didn't start out talking about what hope meant. And they get it all confused. So if you understand what hope means, number one, you can get the verses right talking to the spiritually living. And if you can understand both go to Sheol, you aren't confused. Okay? Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10. Solomon reveals the same truth that at death all men went to Sheol. He had already explained where a man went to in Sheol could not be changed once he was there. Right? We get that same confirmation in the story in Luke. There's a chasm and nobody can cross from one to the other. There is nothing a man can do once he is dead. No activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom to be gained that's going to change anything in where he is. That's what he's talking about. And let me tell you, if you want to do more research and read all the other commentaries, you won't believe where this verse gets taken. Read descriptions of what it means to die, that there's a place we go where things get to be decided, and then there's an ultimate, all kinds of bad teaching. That's not what's being taught here. And you have to understand Sheol and what the truth was in spiritual terms in Solomon's day to understand what he's teaching. But it's not that confusing once you get there. That makes sense? Are we on track with that one? Anybody got a problem and need more explanation? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Jesus told the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise.
That's right. Jesus did say, today you will be with me in paradise. That's where they were going. Yes, ma'am.
Does that mean that there is no longer Sheol because it's absent from the body, present with the Lord?
There's a whole teaching we could follow with that, but yes, you are right. So there was after Jesus died, after the resurrection, after the blood was covered, all the sin, because you can't be in the presence of God with sin. Their sin wasn't covered until the event of the cross occurred. There's a whole teaching in Ephesians where he goes and he releases the souls that were captive. Where were they captive? Here. They're no longer there. There could be two compartments, but one is empty. The other one is still filling up. All right, do we understand that? To be absent now, you don't go to Sheol now. This was Solomon writing in his day to the spiritually living. We can do a whole study in what Paul says happens now. To die is to be absent the body, but to be present before the Lord. That's the hope we have. He's already died. The sins are all covered for. We're all done. Question? Right, but he's been talking to the spiritually alive, and he's just told them things about living and what they should do in life, and then he's transitioned to say there's nothing they can do. There's no planning, in other words, after you die to do good works, to expect there to be a place where you can do more for your rewards. That's not the way the system works. Do it while you're alive, because once you're dead, you don't get to do those things anymore. That time is over. Do your good works now, and the works are not tied to salvation. The good works are not tied to your righteousness. They are tied to something else. They are tied to doing what God wants you to do. We could do another whole study on rewards, right? You see how many rabbit trails I had to avoid so we could get through Ecclesiastes, but it's all there. It's all there in confirmation. Does that make sense? Does that answer that? The reason I put some stress on a couple of these points is because I went back again looking for some nuggets in some of the commentaries, and they do not exist in the commentaries that I have been given. Now they do, some of the commentaries were good about saying, well, we know what this can't mean. And then they go off on, well, it can't mean that there's a place that you go and then you can do some works there, but you couldn't do them here. And, all kinds of bad teachings that come out of it. So that's why it's important to know who he's talking to and to know why he's talking to them. He's talking to those who go to Sheol in the good side of Sheol, because he's not changed who he's talking to. He hasn't changed from talking to the spiritually living. But if you get to that verse and you think, oh, well, he must now therefore be talking to the spiritually dead, or he's not talking spiritual at all. That's the other confusion. They don't move from just talking physical, or they stay in the physical and don't deal with the fact he's moved to the spiritual. And that invites a whole lot of twisting of these scriptures. Yes?
So where does the Greek referencing?
Right. He doesn't give it the same name. Exactly. And if you do a word search, there's all kinds of stuff in the Old Testament that talks about Sheol, but only in the terms of the bad side. And you're like, well, wait a minute. How do I know then this? Well, you don't know it until Christ gives his understanding to us specifically and says, oh, by the way, there was two. Solomon may have had an understanding of that, and that may be why he wrote this.
Or not even, but
Right. This may be the first time there was an understanding that the spiritually alive go to Sheol. For some people who had no concept of that, they're like, what's he talking about? He's like, no. When you're spiritually alive, you do on earth what it is God's called you to do. But your salvation and where you're going to end up is not going to change once you're gone. It's here. And, oh, by the way, it's in God's hands. He's already decided. That's what many people were spinning out about. That's what Solomon was having a tough time with. They'll turn there for some confirmation, but no. The Catholic concept of purgatory comes from books in the Apocrypha. There are references in the book of, I believe it's in the Maccabees. I can't remember if it was 1st or 2nd Maccabees, where there was a battle. And after the battle, a lot of the Jews that were found on the battleground had little idols in their pockets. And so the Jews that went back to collect the goods off the dead found the little idols, and they realized these men had become idol worshipers, and it says they prayed for them. So the concept could be, well, they were already dead, and they were dead as idol worshipers, so we know where they were. So if these Jewish men prayed for them, there must be a way to pray for the dead to go from one place to the other. That's where that comes from. It's an assumption. It's a read between the lines there, and then when there's other places they can go to maybe fill in, that's where they'll go. But that's originally where the Catholic doctrine of purgatory comes from. Right. So he's giving the concept of when you die physically, no matter what you are spiritually, you die and go in the grave. When you die, whether you're spiritually alive or you're spiritually dead, you go to Sheol. Everybody goes to the same place in that regard. Right. Probably. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to separate, because Solomon is so brilliant. You're like, okay, was this thing that was revealed only to him? Nobody else knew? I don't know. In Luke, when Christ talks about the two places, that's where there's a description of the two places of the dead. Because remember, Christ is still alive when he's teaching. So Christ says there's a story of a rich man and a Lazarus, a poor man. And he describes what they did on the earth. And then he says after they die, so they're spiritually dead, and he references and buried, so people would know that he wasn't talking about anything other than physical death. Once they're dead, they go to some place that they could see each other. And from the place they could see each other, one was having it good and one was having it bad. And he gave them different names. So that's where the reference to the bosom of Abraham came from, because the Old Testament saints knew there was a good place that they would go, and that's what they called it. Jesus references that as well. Abraham's there. They're in the bosom of Abraham. And then there's the other place that's mentioned as a place of torment, and it's really hot. I don't think he even names it, does he? Oh, in Hades. In Hades, he lifts up his eyes. So Sheol then takes on a name of that place as being Hades, the bad place, and the bosom of Abraham. So we give names to the two places that we weren't given back in Ecclesiastes. But because Solomon knew That Sheol was where everybody went. That's why he references it here. Yes? Yeah, the only thing is, if you do a word search, in general, Sheol is always a reference to in a somewhat negative light, so it would be more aligned with Hades or Hades. Okay, that's the tricky part, is because that was the word that was used primarily to describe the negative side of Sheol. And so Solomon says that here, and it's why so many people have a difficult understanding of what it means to be in Sheol. Well, Sheol must be bad. Well, no, Sheol isn't bad if you understand there was 2 compartments. Yes? Right. Like I said, if we had the time, we would spend the time, we'd go to all those scriptures and we'd pull out what did it mean, where did he take them, but we're not going to finish that here. Are we okay with that to go on with Ecclesiastes, if that's all right? Okay. No, you don't need to be sorry. I'm just saying that is a whole teaching. There's a whole lot there that we could spend some time and do. And if you want, I'd be happy to do that. We can do that and add that to the first week when we come back. If you guys want that, let me know. I'll be happy to do that. Okay? All right, so back to Ecclesiastes chapter 9. We're going to do verses 11 and 12. 11 starts with, I again saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, and the battle is not to the warriors. And neither is bread to the wise, nor wealth to the discerning, nor favor to men of ability. For time and chance overtake them all. Moreover, man does not know his time, like fish caught in a treacherous net, and birds trapped in a snare. So the sons of men are ensnared at an evil time when it suddenly falls on him. So verse 11, how does Solomon begin? I saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift and the battle not to the warriors. What is the under the sun a reference to? Things seen on earth. So Solomon says the race is not to the swift. What race is he referring to? Right there. Life. The race of life. The swift would be those who by the world's standard should be winning this race. So it's not just life, it's the prize, it's the goal at the end of life. Okay? So this race is not won by those who the world would expect to win it. What is the battle referring to? The same thing, right? The battle would be the outcome, the finishing well during this lifetime. And by finishing well, we mean getting to go to the good side. What does it mean the battle is not to who? It is not won by. When it says it's not to, that means it's not won by. So the battle is not won by the warriors. This is again a picture of those who win this battle are not those who the world predicts will win the battle. That's his whole point. What the world wants to measure, not God's measurement. In verse 11, what does Solomon say? Neither is bread to the wise, nor wealth to the discerning, nor favor to men of ability. With the same logic applied as before, Solomon says bread can be given to those who are not wise in earthly terms. Wealth does not always go to those with discernment. Favor is not always shown to men with natural abilities. Right? This is that confusing thing again. What you don't expect is what God does. So for those that you expect to win, like the swift runner and the warrior, at the end of the game, they don't always get what the world thinks they're going to get. Contrary to that, those that you don't think are smart enough to have a good income and have some bread on the table, God seems to be able to provide just fine. So he's given the other side of that. The things that you might conclude people don't deserve, God still just hands out left and right. Do you see the confusion that people might have yet again? But he's showing both sides of that. God's in control of it, and what he does will baffle the mind from the world's perspective. It just doesn't make sense. What is true in continuing verse 11? So time and chance overtake them all. So there is no plan of man that can be guaranteed to turn out in a specified way. Many men think with more time, they'll come to do the right thing. Right? How many, well, when I'm not a teenager anymore, then I'll grow up and I'll make all the right choices and decisions in my life. Well, when I get married, then I'm going to start to do this or that and do it right. And that's right. You know, when I have children, then I'll act like a grown-up. Well, when I get that job and it's really important what I do on my weekends or how late you know what I'm saying? I just had enough time. Just a little more time. Men always think that, and Solomon says, but time and chance, it overtakes them all. Every one of them. In verse 12, what does Solomon say about the time given to men? Man doesn't know his time. What picture of this does Solomon provide? Like fish caught in a treacherous net and birds trapped in a snare. Each creature was moving through his day just fine, right? The fish didn't wake up and go, oh, it's going to be the day, right? The bird doesn't know. They just went about their day like they did every other day, and all of a sudden, boom, that was it for them. Solomon wants to bring a little more somber thought to it and say, guess what? Men, that's you. You're the fish and you're the bird. You have no idea what today will bring. How does it relate to men? He says, so the sons of men are ensnared at an evil time when it suddenly falls on them. What is the it? Right? The end of life, because that's what he just talked about with the creatures. The sons of men are ensnared at an evil time. In their evil time, death suddenly falls on them. There is not always a warning about death's arrival to make one decide that it is time to live right by God. Truly, truly, do you think if men knew, if every man got a 24-hour notice, tomorrow's it, would they be able that day before to come to God? You cannot do it unless the Spirit has moved you. So even knowing that, man couldn't do it. But the foolishness of the picture of watching it unfold, that they don't know when it's coming and they walk like they do, like they've got more time. That's what Solomon is showing the picture of. Let's move on to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, 13 through 18. Also, this I came to see is wisdom under the sun, and it impressed me. There was a small city with few men in it, and a great king came to it, surrounded it, and constructed large siege works against it. But there was found in it a poor wise man, and he delivered the city by his wisdom. Yet no one remembered that poor man. So I said, wisdom is better than strength. But the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heeded. The words of the wise heard in quietness are better than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. All right, so how does Solomon continue? He starts with what? I came to see wisdom under the sun, and it impressed me. Solomon starts with also. This I came to see as wisdom. This means what he had just expressed was seen as wisdom, and what he shares next is wisdom. So he's tying them together. What he's just been talking about, he's going to also be talking about here. They're tied together. This was wisdom he came to see as wisdom. So it is not perceived as wisdom to Solomon at some time, it would appear, and then later it came to be seen as wisdom. Does that make sense? He makes this very specific use of a word that would indicate there was this shift. This wisdom was seen where? Under the sun, so we're back here. This wisdom had what impact on Solomon? Woo, when you can impress Solomon, that's a big deal. Even men as wise as Solomon continue to learn throughout their lifetime. We never arrive at a place in our lives where we cannot learn from others. Always learning new things from others. By the way, I will just share this with you. As much as I've told you all, and I work so hard and I've spent all this time. Do you know what struck me this week as I'm studying? I'm studying Saturday. And I'm like, oh, no, I spent all day. And I thought, wait a minute. What else would you have done? Well, I really needed to get the rest of the laundry done, and I needed to do this. And then I thought, oh my goodness. You're teaching in the book of Solomon, or as Ecclesiastes, that you're supposed to be content in what the work is that you do every day. Physician, heal thyself. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't have spent my day any better. That's what he put in my life. That's what he did. And he brought it to my attention.
That makes you human.
That makes you, thank you. But you know how awesome it is when the scriptures pierce your own heart and you go, wow, here I am. This is revealed to me to do what he's asked me to do and to find contentment in the very thing he asked me to do. So I'm not just here lecturing you all. He is working on me, and he was working on Solomon. We never stop learning about God and what he can do within us. So verse 14, Solomon begins a short story. He says, there was a small city with a few men in it, and a great king came to it, surrounded it, and constructed a large siege work against it. By man's standards, the city is what? It's small, but what do you think the outcome's going to be? In your mind, when you hear these details, what do you think? It's doomed. Right? It has no chance. So in verse 15, what happens for the city? There's this poor little wise man, and he delivered the city by his wisdom. Yet nobody remembered. So a wise man in the city delivered the city by his wisdom. Here we go. Is there a story with similar details that Solomon would have been familiar with? That's what we go looking for. This story took place in the reign of David, Solomon's dad. This event occurred after Absalom had been defeated by David, and there was a rift in Israel. So after Solomon's defeated, not everybody's sure they want to go back under the rule of David as their king. Some decided they needed to separate and follow a leader for Israel, a man named Sheba, and let only the tribe of Judah stay following King David. That's where the rift was. So the decision of King David and his counselors was to take out Sheba. All right, he's the bad guy. He's the one that's trying to get following that would split the kingdom of Israel away from David. So we're going to look at that story in 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 13 through 22. I will try not to read too fast. As soon as he was removed from the highway, all the men passed by after Joab to pursue Sheba and the son of Birchi. If you want to go back and read what Joab just did to Amasa, you are welcome to do it. It is gruesome. But you needed to find out that he was pursuing Sheba, the son of Birchi. Now he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, even Beth-maachah, and all the Berites, and they were gathered together and also went after him. They came and besieged him in Abel, Beth-maachah, and they cast up a siege ramp against the city, and it stood by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab were wrecking destruction in order to topple the wall. Then a wise woman called from the city, "Hear, hear, please tell Joab, come here, that I may speak with you." So he approached her, and the woman said, "Are you Joab?" And he answered, "I am." Then she said to him, "Listen to the words of your maidservant." And he answered, "I am listening." Then she spoke, saying, "Formerly, they used to say, they will surely ask advice in Abel, and thus they ended the dispute. I am one of those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. You are seeking to destroy a city, even a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord?" And Joab replied, far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. Such is not the case. But a man from the hill country of Ephraim, Sheba the son of Berchi by name, has lifted up his hand against King David. Only hand him over, and I will depart from the city." And the woman said to Joab, "Behold, his head will be thrown over the wall." Then the woman wisely came to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Berchi, and they threw it to Joab. So he blew the trumpet, and they were dispersed from the city, each to his tent, and Joab also returned to the king at Jerusalem. I'm telling you, there's great stories here. Hollywood, you pay attention. These stories have many similarities. They both begin with a small city, a city that was sought out by a great king. In this story, it was David that was seeking it out through Joab, through the men that followed him. The city is surrounded in both stories. There's a large siege work that's built up, or a ramp that's built up to take care of business, and a wise person delivers the city. Solomon refers to a poor wise man, where the actual account says a wise woman. Okay. Verse 18. What is referred to in verse 18 of Ecclesiastes? Verse 18 here that we looked at specifically in this story in 2 Samuel. Verse 18 said what? "Then she spoke, saying, formerly they used to say, they will surely ask advice at Abel, and thus they ended the dispute. It would appear the advice offered at Abel was sought out, and the advice would end disputes. This was the reputation of the city. It would appear there were men and women of Abel who offered their wisdom. It might be possible that Solomon had learned there was a man giving advice and the woman spoke for him. This is a possible explanation, but guess what, ladies? It's not necessary. It doesn't matter. We're not going to get wrapped up in it. Women speak advice wisely all the time, and that could be a whole other teaching, but we're not going to go there either. Joab reports the crime of Sheba to this woman. Why was the city attacked before anyone told the city what the problem was? Had they assumed conspiracy of the city? Notice Joab only asked for Sheba to be released to him. And the woman said to Joab, behold, his head will be thrown over the wall. This is indeed wisdom at its finest. Joab was not a man to be trusted. If you read the story that just occurred when I said at the beginning, when he kills Amasa, if you go and read that whole story, Joab was not a man to be trusted, and he had proven it over and over and over. Opening the city to him was not safe. Allowing Sheba to live and to tell anything he knew of those in the city would only put them at risk. Who knows what he would say? Allowing there to be any thought that Abel was a place for evil men to hide out could put them in danger in the future. Sheba's beheading solved all the problems. Very smart woman. Back to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 15. What truth did Solomon reveal? He says, but there was found in it a wise man, and he delivered the city by wisdom, yet no one remembered the poor man. This would appear to have been a true story, and a wise person did deliver the city by wisdom, and no one remembered the poor man. Verse 16, what truth did Solomon take from this account? So wisdom was better than strength. Even though wisdom is better, what is often the result of those with wisdom? The wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heeded. Verse 17, what is true when words of wisdom are spoken? The words of the wise, heard in quietness, are better than the shouting of the rulers among fools. So speaking words in quietness would indicate words spoken before an angry or a large crowd's there and all that goes with that. Waiting until an event is explosive, and then the ruler must shout from the top of the whatever, right? Just get him to try to follow his wisdom. Once you're doing that, it's too late. I'm not going to listen. It's too late. Notice in the account of the city of Abel, the woman asks to speak with Joab directly. She also came to all the people after, and they acted together. So she's not at the top of the wall with the megaphone screaming down to Joab, right? She's not there trying to scream at all the people, what are you doing? Stop tearing down our wall. Right? She says, I need to go to the source. And she goes, who's in charge? And they tell her, and then she goes, I want to talk to him. And guess what? Job comes to talk to her. I think there was quite conversation that went on between the two of them. She said, why are you here and why are you doing this? And he told her, and she said, okay, then I have a solution for you. And it wasn't his solution. Notice that. But he was still willing to take it. Yeah, I'll take his head. Right? Because he leaves. Verse 18, what is Solomon's conclusion? Wisdom, better than weapons of war. This was specifically true in the story that we've referred to here in 2 Samuel, wasn't it? I mean, they could have had a battle, and who would have died on the outside and died on the inside, and who knows all the horrible things that could have gone on. When there is one acting without wisdom, what can happen in that verse? How does it end? This was also true in regards to Sheba, the son of Birchi, was it not? How much chaos did he create in all of Israel with his rebellion? How much destruction came to this small town of Abel because he chose to go there? One guy, evil heart, doing what he wants, can be devastating. Don't you find it interesting that here again, Solomon uses the phrase, I have seen, and there is a story that almost identically parallels it. Solomon is the author of Ecclesiastes. Solomon continues to display wisdom and learn wisdom, even in all the things that he's processing. Solomon is writing this at the end of his life, looking back. Do you see that he gives advice even in the realm of things he did not practice in his own life? Ladies, there's so much here. And I did not mean to cut off a conversation. I would love to have gone there, but I knew I was going to be pushed to 11:30. I'll be happy to have that conversation, right? But I did want us to get to the end of this because it had a flow. It has to flow together to understand how that story ties into the rest of what he's been talking about. So the keys for me in this chapter would be understand that hope was talking about a shift to spiritual reality, the spiritually living and the spiritually dead. When you do that, you keep those verses in context. At the end, when you understand everybody went to Sheol, again, you keep the flow in context. If you don't get either of those correct, you have a tendency for the verses in between to be sandwiched with the wrong thing. Either you're talking about physically living, which then it doesn't make sense. And then if you're talking spiritually, but you think at the end, it's only talking to the spiritually dead because they went to Sheol, then you had to go backwards and you're still getting it wrong. It's spiritually and both go to Sheol. When you get that, all of those verses in between then make sense. And you're not trying to explain away anything. Go back and spend some time there and see if that's not the same conclusion that you come to. That if you take the wrong up front, where you go with it, and if you take the wrong after, where do you go with it? It's really only with those bookends that those verses come to make sense. And there was at least one time in commentaries, I will tell you, I did find somebody that made a reference back to the story in 2 Samuel.